What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Here we are on Hangover Tuesday, as it were. Technically, still a little bit hungover from last night, but we gotta pull this apart a little bit. We gotta dissect this. We gotta move past it. Gotta figure out what's going on with these Seattle Seahawks in detail, not just in general. In general, we just lost a game, and it's our first loss in this new Mike McDonald era, first loss of the season, and we're moving past it. We're moving to the next one. And in order to do so, we're going to take a look at what Pro Football Focus had to say this week. We're going to start with the offense like we always do. Keep in mind that none of this is to say that, well, PFF said it, so they must be right, nor is it PFF said it, so they must be wrong. So we're going to strive to find some kind of balance in that regard. So let's just take a look at the overall grades to start with. And the offensive side of the ball is going to be pretty good, right? Because the offense cooked last night. The offense was great. And I'm not shocked to see that PFF has given Ken Walker the highest score of any player in that game. And that's with them dinging him for pass protection, which I think you're starting to see a little bit of why Charbonnet is considered a better third down back. I think this is definitely a strong indication as to why Charbonnet's on the field for more passing downs, and also probably why Charbonnet played so much in this game. It was partially because Walker was coming back from the injury, but Charbonnet, he's just a little bit better in those passing situations. But Walker did have a great game. A lot of awesome stuff he did out there. A 93.3 grade in running the ball. It was a little bit feast or famine with him. He had some negative carries as well, some negative plays, but I mean, you can see how special he is. He's special. So, Chenault, that doesn't really mean anything because he only played the one snap. But also, not super surprised, Charbonnet's number 3. And really number 2, because again, Chenault played one snap. Let's be real there. But Charbonnet, really well-rounded game. Excuse me. You can see the pass protection score really good. Passing game, the running. So Charbonnet is a guy who takes a lot of heat from this fan base, I feel like. I think Charbonnet is a guy who's really gotten some hatred thrown his way over the last year and a half. But he is rounding into a really, really effective back and who's a guy who's really, really valuable to this team. So shout out to him. Another really good grade for him. Metcalf, despite the mistakes, of which he had a good amount, still graded out very well, a 70, which is what I talk about with DK, right? The good stuff easily outweighs the bad stuff. The problem with Metcalf is that the bad stuff is very in your face and obvious. He's like Russell Westbrook in his prime, right? Westbrook was a really, really, really good player in his prime, but the stuff that was bad with Westbrook was so in your face, it was hard to not notice it. But the reality is, pretty much every player in the league that isn't like a superstar has that 10% bad, but some of their 10% are not as obvious as DK Metcalf's 10%. I really think that's what it boils down to here. So, overall, he did have an effective game. Laken Tomlinson graded out well, and I find that to be interesting because they graded him out well overall. And maybe I can agree with some of that. I don't know if I can agree with all of it. Bobo finally on the board here with a good grade, mostly for his run blocking. Again, that is his greatest strength as a player, 80.9 as a run blocker. And our receivers are having a lot of trouble run blocking this year, and blocking in general, I feel like, so important. AJ Barner, we talked about him a lot last night. He had a really good game, graded out respectably in most areas. I think that if this keeps up, he's just going to take that tight end 2 role away from Pharaoh Brown. And we'll get to Pharaoh Brown later, much later, because he's way down this list. He's still having some problems. Maybe he's still fighting back from the injury. I don't know. But AJ Barner, good game. Charles Cross, we're starting to get now into like the more average graded players. We'll talk more about Charles Cross later. I'm a little bit conflicted here, right? The pass protection was just kind of whatever. The run blocking was good, right? The run blocking grade's solid. Cannot shake this cough for the life of me, man. So, overall, Cross has to feel pretty good about this. Lockett, pretty decent grade as well. Mostly dinged on his blocking, which I guess makes sense. He's not a blocker, but he's there when we need him. JSN, it's kind of interesting. JSN really struggles to pull out a good grade on PFF. His style of play just doesn't seem to lend itself well to PFF. I don't feel like he gets graded well very much, even when he plays effectively. And I do think JSN was effective last night, so kind of interesting that he can't seem to catch a break on PFF. Geno Smith was graded out down here, which I'm calling crap on that one. That's definitely not reflective of what he did last night. This is probably because of some of his misses in garbage time, and PFF doesn't weigh out garbage time, because those last two drives, I know Geno made some good throws and got some yards, but that was when he threw the pick. That was when he threw some of the bad throws that he threw that should have been picked off. He had a couple that could have easily been picked off beyond the one that did, and PFF doesn't weigh those out, but, that was garbage time. So that's probably what you're looking at here. Like, you can't... This indicates that Geno Smith had a below-average game throwing the ball, which is, if you watch that game, that's not true. But Connor Williams, decent as well. He's rounding into shape, guys. We're starting to get the stuff that we wanted out of Connor Williams. It's a little bit of a trek to get there, but he is starting to play well. And with that will come improvements across the offensive line. Christian Haynes, respectable, mostly in pass protection, which honestly might be a little more valuable right now, because Geno's going to get hurt if this keeps up, man. We're already pushing it. Brady Russell only played 3 snaps, average grade, whatever. Noah Fant, struggling to get ahead here, man. Struggling to really get going here. Just kind of stuck in the mud here. Same with Pharaoh Brown, who was able to I'll say this, right? I didn't see every single rep that Pharaoh Brown had run blocking, and I know he picked up a penalty, which should hurt this probably more than it does. But it's almost out of me, guys. It's almost out of me, this cough. Pharaoh Brown did salvage his grade with good run blocking here, and there is something to be said for that, but we're not getting out of him what we're getting out of A.J. Barner right now, I'll say that much. And the two guys on offense who were actually graded poorly on the right side of the offensive line, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later as well, Anthony Bradford really got killed for his run blocking, which, this is the frustrating thing. There's nothing consistent here, man. When the season started, Bradford couldn't pass protect to save his life, but he was a good run blocker. He was really good run blocking. Now he's getting a 31, not even a 31 from PFF in run blocking. And I know it's a small sample size because we didn't run the ball that much. But this is kind of annoying because it's hard to really make decisions when your players are this inconsistent. And Stone Forsythe got slaughtered, which, watching the game, I feel like this was a little bit harsh, to be honest. 28.4. And I'm not saying that it was a lot better than this, but this is brutal, man. For a guy who was going up against Aiden Hutchinson for a lot of that game, I don't know. I don't know if I buy this one. And we'll talk more about this in a second here. But this is moving past the primary grades. Let's go to the passing chart, which once again I want to celebrate a little bit. Geno Smith, some of this is garbage time, like I said. He threw some garbage time passes for the first time this year. But the thing that really sticks out to me is he barely threw anything deep down the field, and he still ended up with almost 400 passing yards. That is so hard to do in the NFL. Usually when a player has 400 or more yards passing or in that area, it's because they had 1 or 2 passes that went for like 60, 70 yards, and they were deep passes. Nothing here. I don't think he had any passes over 30 yards. I'll say that much, right? Because I think the 2 passes of more than 20 yards were like 21 yards in the air. And then the interception, which was this one right here, deep middle, was like 25 yards. So he wasn't really able to push the ball down the field at all. He had 3 attempts. 2 of them were complete. But I think the 2 that were complete were like 21 yards in the air, very close to 20. So there was really nothing in terms of like, oh, I'm going to go get 70 yards on this one play, and that's going to take care of a lot of the battle for me. That's kind of what happened against Miami, right? He hit 1 70-yarder. Other than that, it was like, a decent game. It was fine. But that one play almost got him to 300 yards just on the strength of the 71 yards. This game, again, he pounds the middle of the field over and over and over again. 15 attempts in the middle of the field, short. 7 attempts in the middle of the field, intermediate. which was more, he had more attempts in the short middle than he did on the short left and short right combined. More attempts in the middle intermediate than he had on the intermediate left and intermediate right combined, and more attempts in the behind the line of scrimmage middle than the behind the line of scrimmage left and right combined. So middle of the field is getting worked right now. Ryan Grubb's offense is working as intended. We didn't win that game, I understand. I'm not saying the offense played perfectly, but the Ryan Grubb offense is clicking. And look at the success, right? 30 yards on passes behind the line of scrimmage between the numbers. We're actually starting to have some success on those plays. Okay? On passes behind the line of scrimmage, 7 attempts, 44 yards. We're getting there. There's actually some modicum of success here. So the yak isn't there completely because most of these attempts don't go that much further than where they get caught. I understand. But the success is there. So Geno Smith, man, he's got something cooking here. And Ryan Grubb is helping him cook. It's working right now. Okay, I want to look at a rushing direction, which this is the thing that confuses me. So I'm looking at these numbers. So left side, we did okay, right? Left end, 7.7 yards a carry and a touchdown. The left guard, we only had 1 attempt, so who cares? Middle left, we only had 1 attempt, who cares? But this is the level of success that you have. 2 carries, 6 yards, and Laken Tomlinson gets a good run blocking grade. But look at what we did over on the right side. Middle right, we averaged 21 yards a carry. Right tackle, off right tackle, 11 yards a carry. What were their grades? All right? When you're rushing to the right side, middle right, right tackle, even right off right edge, off the tight end, 5 yards per carry. We had a ton of success running the ball to the right side, but the right side of the line got destroyed for their run blocking. So is Ken Walker just the greatest running back who ever laced up a pair of thigh pads, or is this not possibly reflective of reality? That's hard for me to believe. I could understand saying that, oh, the offensive lineman didn't do anything great. It was all Ken Walker. Like, that would be, I mean, that maybe, right? Maybe. But to say that those were the 2 worst players on the team in terms of run blocking, pretty much, to say they were a complete disaster run blocking, hard for me to buy when that's where we're having success. We had a lot of success running the ball over to that right side. So I know it wasn't a big sample size, but PFF should account for that. It's not like PFF is downgrading anything because of sample size. Look at Laviska Shenault's grade if you don't believe me. So a little bit confused there, but you can kind of see the formula continue to play itself out, right? Also, 0 rushing attempts off left tackle, which is interesting because Cross has been run blocking pretty well so far this year. I don't really know what's going on there. But pretty good stuff, pretty agreeable. I'm not unhappy with the numbers, maybe a little bit unhappy with the use. But yeah, impressive stuff. Pass protection. We got to talk about this because, wow. I knew it was not going to be good, but I did not think it was going to be like this, man. So Stone Forsythe, 12 pressures allowed in 1 game. Now, to his credit, 10 of those were hurries. He allowed 10 hurries, 1 QB hit, 1 QB sack. I mean, I understand the ask is big. He's going up against Aiden frickin' Hutchinson. And he had, look, when you get to that end of that game, or even most of that second half, most of the game just in general, where we're down multiple scores pretty much the whole game, it's really hard to pass protect because the other team knows you're going to try to throw the ball. So I get it. Trying to pass protect in situations where you're down multiple scores is the worst. So I'm going to give him a lot of breaks here. But man, 12 pressures in a game, I've never seen that before. I have never seen anything like that before. And Charles Cross, not really better. 1 QB hit and 9 hurries for 10 pressures allowed. So it's kind of crazy that he still pulled out an average grade, which does speak to the fact that PFF gave him some breaks. PFF was understanding of the situation. and they gave him a lot of credit for some stuff. But man, I mean, god dang, I didn't know it was that bad. I didn't know it was that bad. And Charles Cross, I mean, numerically, again, I'm not going to kill him for this game because I don't think he played terribly. In fact, I think he played okay. But you've kind of undone all the good work you did over those first 3 games, numerically. So, hopefully we can put him in better situations going forward, because trying to pass protect when you're down big is brutal. But the game, you're down big, but the game's not over, right? Because it's not like the opposing pass protection is going to take it easy on you. All right, so beyond that, it's actually pretty quiet. Tomlinson gave up 2 pressures, Bradford 1, Haynes 1, Connor Williams 1, which honestly is actually really good given the fact that we dropped back to pass as much as we did. Shout out to Connor especially, man. 1 pressure given up in a game where you drop back to pass like 73 times. That's actually really good. So I find it to be interesting that Ken Walker and Pharaoh Brown both got killed for their pass protection, even though they didn't allow any pressures. Walker had no penalties. But, yeah, some stuff to work on for sure. Some stuff to look for in the improvement category next week. Even though I still feel like, oddly enough, the offensive line actually played a little bit better than we've seen in previous games. The numbers don't show it, but I feel like the offensive line gave the offense more of a chance to actually have success in this game. And for whatever it's worth, they allowed 1 sack. The other 2 sacks were not considered to be on anybody's head specifically, right? Okay, real quick, I want to take a look at the run blocking stuff, because even though there's only so much the run blocking stuff can tell us beyond the grade, one thing that I find interesting here is the ratio of zone runs to gap runs. It seems like Grub and this offense have settled into using zone blocking more than the run blocking, or gap blocking, excuse me, which makes sense, I think, given the kind of running back talent we have on this team. But it's also notable that we have a lot of guys on this team who just aren't very good at the zone run blocking. Like Bobo was graded out really well in this game. Other than that, like Cross, Tomlinson, Pharaoh Brown, all those guys clearly getting graded higher at gap blocking. So maybe it's just a thing that needs to be worked on as the season goes on, but it's not like the run blocking was great overall. So, and again, it's a small sample size. We didn't run the ball enough. Okay, I'll see you guys later. This was a longer than I expected video, longer than I wanted maybe a little bit, but I wanted to talk about this offense because that was some really impressive stuff out there, and we have to shout out the things that need to be shouted out. All right, see you guys later. We'll talk about the defense on PFF later, but let me know what you think, and go Hawks.